Good morning, friends. Welcome to the Wednesday LiveStream from Dulcimer Crossing. DulcimerCrossing.com is designed to help you learn to play the music you love on the dulcimer you love, whether it's a mountain dulcimer or a hammered dulcimer or any of the cousins of these instruments. Today, we're going to follow up with a question that was a piece of what we looked at last week. We were looking at adding modal chords to melodies that don't have chords with them. And we were talking about some specific situations. And the follow-up question that came was, how do I really decide which chords to use when all I see is this? So this is our two selections from the Dance Music of Ireland, O'Neill's 1001. I just opened it up this morning and just picked a page. And here's what I come up with. So let's go through the exercise right here. This key signature, this is how I first look at things. The key signature here says no sharps or flats, which makes me think perhaps this is in C. And then I go to the end and, oh, it doesn't end on C. I wonder what's up with that. So the next thing I'm going to try to do is play the melody. And this is a good example of one that is a little bit strange. So I'm going to leave the music up here while I play the melody. Now let's see if I can see the melody while I'm playing it, because it takes a lot of logistics for all this stuff. Biddy's Wedding. So that's the A part. It repeats. The B part, second line. Here we are, B part again. When you get done with that, it feels like we're done, right? No, it does not. It feels like you expect to be done, and it feels like as you look at this phrase, the walk down, the let's see, can my pointer point things here? No, it doesn't appear that I can. But let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth measure in. We have this figure, which basically describes a G chord. You're starting on there's a passing tone in the middle beat of the first three. It's a C natural, but we're starting on a B. We're playing a D, B, and G. That describes, it's an arpeggio of a G chord. So I would be thinking we're going to put a G chord there. And if I look at measure 8, which is at the end of the first line, oh, we have the same figure. And this is what I do when I'm learning a new tune. I always look through, oh, there's the same thing. It happens again. I wonder if it happens elsewhere. Let's look in the B section. Oh, 4 measures in, same location, same pattern. Now go to the end. Aha. So one of the things that happens in a song is if you're in you're in a key, the chord that's called dominant, or the fifth step of the scale, the 5 chord. In this case, I'm going to lean towards C is one possibility for where we are. And we're going to go to the G and come back to the C, because the dominant points us home again. It points us to the tonic. The 5 points to 1. So if I would play the C chord, Sorry. And that actually is a C chord. And here's an F. F and A are three of the... Whoa, my C is a little out of tune there. F, C, or F, A are the first and third of an F chord, which would be the 4 chord in this key. So that would make me think first. And it makes us, it ends on the 5 chord, which are my buddy Aaron May really wrestles with. we play the game. I've mentioned this before. We play the game of set lists, and if I'll pick a song we both love and it's the last song of the set, and she realizes that after we get into it, oh no, this is one that ends on 5, she's going to start an encore right away that's going to let us end on 1, because that feeling up in the air is the thing that catches her. But it is a characteristic of some Celtic music, not all, but some. And so one possibility is this song just ends on a... It doesn't go back and finish, which is where you think it might be. But here's where we're going to take a look on the interesting side. Because what happens if we played this with a... and played an A instead of a C? Let's see, what A do I want? And playing a G with the A would also make sense in two of the... We talked about this last week. In two of the minor modes, it makes more sense. Or the A minor, and the G are the flat 7 away from each other. They're a whole step away from each other. And so it... having the 2 chords, instead of being C, I'm using the relative minor. Okay, I'm trying to get to my the correct Facebook page. So I can see the questions that you're asking. Let me continue with this thought before I go look there. So if I go through the whole song and play the A minor instead, I could, instead of playing the C, the G, and the F, I could play their relative minors and play the A minor. And then when it's time for the G, I just play that. But then when it's time for the F, instead of playing F, I play D, F, A is the relative minor of F. It shares two of the same 3 notes. F, A, C, and D, F, A. Our melody describes just F and A, so it's possible that either one of these chords could be underneath it. Now, what would happen if instead of G, I played an E minor, which is a relative minor of G? I don't think a wedding song by the title, that's probably what they're thinking of. I don't think so. But let's stop the sharing for a minute. I don't think so. But it is one of those things that would be an interesting variation. So the question is, which chords shall I choose? And if I'm playing, what's my context? You know, if I'm playing with playing with a session where this is going to be, we all know the song, we're going to play the chords that are most likely to be the ones that are people are going to know that go with this normally. Am I playing in a concert kind of setting where I'm choosing what the chords are that are going to go with this? That can change things. I could, in that case, instead of using only the ones that naturally go with the song, I could also substitute in other chords and give myself a minor variation on the same tune. That's not going to work in a jam session. It can work in a performance. It can work in a private kind of, this is going to be an exercise I use. It can work in a performance situation if we all agree. If there's just me, I can agree. I just have to remember. If there's other people, then we just have to agree together. This time we're going to that minor variation thing. And we might go only partly and from the C to the A minor and the D minor and the G, or we might go all the way and use the E minor. Now, why does this melody work with those minor chords? It's because the other melody note that's showing up here, we had a C, an E, and a G, typically a C chord. But if you add A to that, that's that relative major and minor thing. This is getting theory heavy today. I get it. But the beauty of it is the A minor 7 chord has all those notes in it. That's why it works in this situation. Ah, good point, Doug. The celebration of the wedding is done, but the marriage goes on, right? So there's, yeah, a feeling of anticipation. Good thought. The other thing in a celebratory Kaylee kind of sense is you maybe don't want, yeah, Maddie's wedding also ends on a 5. Maybe you don't want to have it feel like it's done because there's something on a nice surprise that does for the audience. I've listened to Green Linnet Records had some things that were not good about the company and how they treated their musicians, but they also introduced a whole bunch of us to the music, the Celtic music. Silly Wizard, Johnny Cunningham, Ally McBain. There's a whole bunch that recorded with Green Linnet. But I remember one beautiful set of Silly Wizard songs where they were doing this set, and it was like they get done with this one song and they go to this next one, and it was a hard stop and a jump to the next song, no segue, and it seemed like they had nothing in common. But as soon as it's just like, we're turning right here, like you're in the movie and there's a car chase and this person turns. Well, you go with the one that's turning, right? Just because you expected to go that way doesn't mean that's what you're going to do. You're going to turn right and you're going to go down that path. And then they did one song that built up the audience. You could hear it was a live recording. You could hear the audience going along with them. And then they got to the end and then ba-da-da. And the tonic was never present. And the audience just roared. And it was like, there's supposed to be more, but we stop now, which is also the feeling that slip jigs have, the 9/8 tunes, where you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A lot of the melodies in slip jig world lead you back to the beginning, and so they kind of feel like this is the song that never ends kind of feel. That's one of the things that the 5 chord does. It's one of the things that happens there too. So now let's take a look at the other tune that I had here. Let me share that again. And we're going to look at the other one. Biddy's Wedding's at the top. Patio Carol is the one at the bottom. We got two sharps at the beginning, which makes me suggest it might be in D. But if you look partway through, one of the things that caught my eye about this one is, we've got an accidental in the second half. There's a G sharp followed by a G natural right away. Uh-huh. That's gonna be fun. So the A part, there's nothing like in that other section that concludes the phrases. But if you look at the second full measure, you've got a pickup notes, F sharp, D, D. There's that phrase again that kind of starts it all off. And the third measure, the A, F sharp. So I'm playing this on my mountain dulcimer right now, and I'm going to tell you a story about this particular one in a minute. But what I'm choosing to do, this is melody string. And then I'm using the noodling position for the chord shape. And playing some of that on the middle string. And because I'm going to zero a lot, it gives me a chance to do some pull-offs and hammer-ons. Now we go up a whole octave. And this is the story I wanted to tell you. This is my Robert Stevens dulcimer, and this is the third bridge we've had on here. He's been in the process of refining what he wants this to be. And the first bridge was made out of wood, and he told me that a couple people's bridges had failed. And so he sent me a replacement bridge. So this was early in the pandemic. We couldn't be on the beach because they were closed, because that's where people would congregate at the beginning. So my wife and I went and parked by a chain link fence and looked at the ocean, because they can't take that away from you. So we're sitting there with the windows open, and I've got my dulcimer and I've got my big hemostat and I'm tools and I'm taking it apart. I'd shipped him the old bridge, and he shipped me the new construction he had. And when I put it on, I could never get this one to exactly stand upright. So everything above the 7th fret was a little bit out of tune. And I lived with that for a long time, and I got really tired of it. So I said, "Can you help me?" And he goes, yeah, I've redesigned that again. And I got a piece. So this just got back. I had to take it off. And that every time I take strings and things off of an instrument, I get a chance to clean it up. So I did all that stuff, and it arrived. And boy, it's so fun to get it back going again. Anyway, that makes it possible for me to play this high. And in the same way, I could play this all melody. And then I've got to jump all the way back up to the... And I'm going to have to be at the 13.5 fret for that G sharp. So I'm going to use the same the tactic I used in the middle, using the noodling position. That at least keeps me close. So when I get done with the end of the song, and that's the other reason to tell you that other story, because nylon strings take longer to settle in. So I've had to keep retuning often. Question Jim is asking, is the G sharp part of the secondary dominant? And the answer is yes, because we're going to expect that in the key of D, which is what Marclus are, we have two sharps at the beginning. That is normally a key of D signature. And we get to the end and it ends on a D. So this is likely in the key of D. And I've got so it goes to the A chord in measure 1, 2, 3, 4. So a lot of D in that first part. And then the B part higher. And then this is what's happening here. I've got the D chord first, and then the A chord, and the D chord, and then the G chord. E7 actually. So the chord, this is kind of like Whiskey Before Breakfast. It's got all those chords in the B part. So I would expect these are the chords that are going to best go with it. Now, how did I get to that, arrive at that conclusion? The same way I did for biddies, and that is the F sharp and D are key components of a D chord. The A and the C sharp, there's no A here. I mean, the E and the C sharp, there's no E here. I'm in the B part, second measure. The E and the C sharp are key components of an A chord, and then the D and the B are key components of a G chord, and then I've got D and F sharp, which is the other notes in the G chord. Say it again. D chord here in the first beat of the first full measure. Then I've got an A chord, then a G chord, then a D chord, and then a D chord and an A chord. Now here, when we get to the fourth measure, that first beat, we've got a D, we've got a B, and we've got a G sharp. There's no E here for me to say, oh, this is an E chord. But when I put G sharp together with D and B, I expect to have an E there. So it's implied this would be a rootless triad. Oh, language. Isn't that fun? Because the E7 chord has an E, a G sharp, a B, and a D natural. And so because I've got experience doing this, I'm used to seeing that, so that's why I look for that. And then it ends up landing on the A chord. Everything else is landed when it got finished on their phrases on the D chord. This one doesn't. It lands on the A chord, and then because first we had the G sharp, which is part of that secondary dominant, as Jim correctly identified, then it changes to a G natural, which when you put it in the A chord, makes it an A7 chord. It pulls us even tighter to the D, and then the A, and then the G, and the D, and the D, 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 D. Da 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 pa 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 pa. singing an octave lower because I can't sing that high. But you can see there's a lot of typical movement in the chords there. Now, if you're brand new to a song, you're brand new to music, you're brand new to dulcimers, this is higher level thinking. But I want to show today that it's not impossible to figure it out. And there are some, I'm looking at the notes of the melody and the chords they describe. That's the language I used. The chords they describe to help me choose which chords are going to go along there. Now, I'm calling this modal chords again because both of these songs, in the way they appear to be Ionian songs, which we would call the major songs. So that is how I'm making my decisions. Does that make sense? Now, let me share a couple other things. Might have mentioned this last week, but in case you didn't see it, our entire live events archive is available to every mentor and workshop member of Dulcimer Crossing. What is in here are all of the workshops, the monthly live workshops we have, and I'm going to tell you about the one coming up very soon. But also the live streams that we've talked here, and we're grouping them by topics. So these are only samples I'm showing you here. And the reason I'm showing this is if I'm logged in as a DIY student, I can find this under the live stream archive. I need to put sample here, that so you can clearly see it. That brings us here, and you can see some of the, we have them grouped by learning and theory, skills and techniques, performing, technical considerations, tools, genre, live jams, tune time, and instrument specific. There's over 150 of these that have been recorded, and they're powerful resources. They're all on Facebook. They're all on YouTube. They may be harder to find because they're not curated there. They're here. And if something is grayed out when you log in and look at this, it's because the ones that are bold are for preview. So you can see what we have here. If you want to get access to everything, you can upgrade to workshop level here. If you're already at DIY level, it's just $25 for that first month. During that month, you can also take part in the workshop that's happening. But this is part is available to DIY students, so you can see what's in the other part. The other thing, and I can't show that there. Okay, I'm going to stop. How do I? There we go. Stop sharing. The other thing is somebody asked last week, could I be a DIY student and also book a private lesson? It's like, well, duh, that makes perfect sense. So we're working on making that possible in a way that you can easily find. So let me make a quick look into this. Okay, so here I am. Here I am in our Dulcimer Crossing members area. Here's the next workshop that's coming up. Katie Moritz is going to give next week's workshop, but take note, this is not on Thursday, it's on Friday. Her schedule didn't permit a Thursday. We always do our workshops on Thursdays. This is the one exception. And she's going to talk about her 5 interval, or the 5th interval exercise. I know, Jim, you've talked about that before. And you can, this is this page you see when you come here. Let's actually see what she says here. Her 5th interval exercise she's developed. So that's what we're going to have in her workshop next week. Now, what I wanted to get to is I'm logged in I can click book my lesson. If I'm a mentor level student, I can see this. I can choose my free mentor level lesson every month. But if I want to book an add-on lesson, I can click this link, and here's where you can book an add-on lesson with these teachers from Dulcimer Crossing. So that's a new thing. Question from somebody who wanted to know about Dulcimer Crossing. It's like, well, that makes perfect sense. As always, if you have feedback, questions that you want to ask, please send them to me, steve@dulcimercrossing.com. Okay. The final question. Thing about Red Hair Boy, I put the 5 chord in there and removed it. In the beginning, I put it there because I'd heard other people play it that way, and it's common at the end of a song that's going to end on 1 to do a quick 5-1. There's nothing in the melody that requires the 5 chord. And so when I began thinking about that, and that's what I did first, and I began studying the tune and realizing it's really a Mixolydian tune, there's no 5 chord possible. That's why I took it out. So I did help create more confusion. But I'm trying to not. That's not to say if you really like it, you can't put it in. But there's nothing in the melody that requires it. And that's that. I think you had the Ogden Nash quote about something about rules and things where they don't apply in the email that you sent, Jim. Yeah, there are no hard and fast rules. There are a lot of principles, and there's context, and there is choice and judgment and taste. And all of that goes into it. So you might listen to it and say, well, that's not my cup of tea. I would rather have something else happen there. Or you might say, ooh, that's different. I really like it, even if it's not, quote, correct. And then it's about context. Where am I playing? Who am I playing with? And listening. When they're playing it, do they put that chord in or not? And if it's a session where they're not putting it in, I won't. If the session where they are, it's only on 1 beat, I may or may not. My ears might hear it and just go to it. On other times, I might say, I'm going to stubbornly not do it. I'm just going to leave it out. Yeah, if I can make it sound less Irish, perhaps. Now, that being said, harps without sharping levers, which is the clairsoch, is the Celtic instrument, Celtic harp, that doesn't have an accidental. Uilleann pipes, where you're playing with the bellows blown, that doesn't have accidentals they're tiny holes, unless you partially lift up and get a recorder where you can shave the hole a little bit and get the half step in between. They're not built to have chromatic notes on them. Fiddles are. There's nothing to say where your hand's going to be. So fiddles are the reason a lot of those things end up in there, because all they have to do is slide down a little bit, make it a -5 or whatever, and they're a half step below it. And they can go back and forth between modes, which is probably, I'm going to guess, where the Patty O'Carroll song came from. Probably came from fiddling, because a fiddle can do both of those notes. Turns out on a mountain dulcimer with a 13.5 fret can also do both notes. So we want it neat and clean, but this is a human pursuit, which means it's going to be dirty. Yes, you're right. And with the advent of sharpening levers, it makes it easy to reach up. Well, easy. It makes it possible to reach up and flip a note and make it sharp for a period and put it back down as it goes on in harps. And coincidentally, the designer of those sharpening levers is from Loveland, Colorado. They get used on all the Celtic, all the harps at Dusty Strings in Seattle. Anyway, there you go. That's your trivia. Workshop next week. Live events sample archive is available now. And for those of you who are celebrating Passover, may it be blessed. And for those of you who are celebrating Holy Week, may it also be blessed. I'll see you next week. Next week, that's the jam. Aaron May and I are going to jam, and the tune is going to be Over the Waterfall. So if you want to prepare, Over the Waterfall. I'm glad I didn't forget that. So bye-bye for now. Keep hammering